I know you think carbohydrates are gonna kill you. I get it. I see all the videos on YouTube. I know you've been told this ad nauseum, but let me give you a different perspective to give you a better understanding of what we mean by carbs and why carbs won't kill you. The reason I'm making this video is because the algorithm speaks to you. When you start to watch videos that are all about no carb, that's all you're gonna see. And before you know it, you'd think everyone is doing no carb or low carb. But there's a whole nother world out there depending on the algorithm. Did you know that there are athletes that are eating 120 grams of carbs, not in a day, but per hour, for hours and hours and hours, up to 6 hours in many cases, sometimes more, sometimes less. But they're consuming these in the form of sugar. And what's happening is they're not dying, they're not getting diabetes, they're not getting insulin resistant. In fact, they're probably losing weight with each hour. How is this even possible? Because if you follow most of what you see on the algorithm on YouTube, you're gonna think that these people are nuts and they're gonna die. And if they just became fat adapted, they'd be even better athletes. That's what you're thinking right now, or that's what you've been led to believe. But if you were to not be subjected to how YouTube filters videos to you, there's a whole nother world out there. And so we should probably discuss it to understand that it's possible that carbs may not be the entire problem and they're not gonna kill you the way you think. Now, how is this possible that people are doing this? Right now, when I'm just sitting here doing nothing, talking to you, my body is burning carbohydrates as well as fats for energy. At a cellular level, the mitochondria inside the cells are using primarily fats for ATP production for the energy of the cell. When you're at rest, when you're sleeping, when you're doing what I'm doing right now, just sitting, talking to someone, the majority of the energy that is being produced is used with oxygen, and fat is the majority of the energy source. Carbohydrates are being used, but a lot of fats. We're gonna use some numbers. Let's say that 90% of my body is using fat as an energy source right now, but that means that 10% is being used as carbohydrates. Now, if I were to start walking around the building very fast, then it's possible that my body would start utilizing more fat as an energy source. As I start to walk faster and faster, as I run, as the intensity goes up, there comes a point where you can't produce enough energy fast enough to create muscle contraction. So your body won't be able to use fat because it's just too slow of a process. So as time goes on, as your exercise intensity goes up, all of a sudden it starts to shift like this. So you start burning more and more carbohydrates and less fat because you need to contract your muscles faster for longer. So fat becomes not the primary energy source. As you run faster and faster and faster, like sprinting, your body can't contract muscles using fat as an energy source at all. And the reason why is because it's just too slow of a process. It requires oxygen. So when your body shifts and starts producing most of its energy through carbohydrates, that's usually a high intensity exercise. So at low intensity exercise, our body primarily is using fat as an energy source. And at high intensity exercise, our body is producing primarily carbohydrates as an energy source. Now this is assuming that you're healthy. If you're metabolically unhealthy, then this may or may not work. Why can you and I not consume 120 grams of carbohydrates in an hour? The reason why is because you and I are probably unfit and unable to produce that much exercise at such a high intensity for so long that we would require that type of carbohydrate intake. What this means to you and I is for most of our exercise that we're doing when it's aerobic type of exercise, what we want to do is exercise in a way that primarily uses fat as an energy source. But when we're sitting here doing nothing, our body is percentage-wise using mostly fat, percentage-wise, but not using a whole lot. So as we increase the intensity of exercise, our body will start to use more fat as an energy source. That's the zone that we want to work out in for the best health benefits. Thus, how do you know whether you're doing it or not? A good rule of thumb is when you're exercising, whether you're riding your bike, whether you are rowing, whether you're on a treadmill, whether you're on elliptical, is take 180 minus your age, and that's approximately the heart rate that you should be at that will burn the most amount of fat and not be transitioning into that carbohydrate type of exercise. Another way to figure it out, the second way, is your breathing. If you're exercising and breathing like that, and you can probably talk and make a sentence during your exercise, and you could probably continue this for an hour, that type, then you're probably exercising at the right zone as well. Those are ways to ballpark it. But if you're exercising so hard that you can hardly speak, then your intensity is too high and you're transitioning into primarily carbohydrate use for energy. This explains why, by the way, that people like Ironman athletes and some long distance cyclists who will become fat adapted through either keto or carnivore types of exercise are very good at utilizing fat. They train their bodies to use more fat for longer. The big problem for many people is you have to be in a sport where there's no intensity, because the athletes that do carnivore, the athletes that do keto, they're very good at long-lasting types of events, but if it becomes an intense exercise, almost invariably they have a hard time because their body is not used to using carbohydrates in that manner. This further explains why a super lean athlete may be able to consume 700 grams of carbohydrates during their 5 or 6 hour cycling event and be totally lean, no insulin problems, no blood sugar problems. And the reason why is because the more intense exercise for longer, the more carbohydrates you burn. If this were not true and I'm wrong, then that changes the entire physiology books that as we know it, and all these athletes would end up with type 2 or type 1 diabetes because their pancreas would just blow out. And of course that doesn't happen, but you have to be metabolically fit in order to do this. If someone is insulin resistant or already has type 2 diabetes, this is the reason that this process doesn't work. It's assuming a person is metabolically normal or metabolically fit. So it's interesting to me that when you watch YouTube and you start to notice that it seems like everybody's on carnivore. As soon as you hit one video that talks about carnivore, suddenly everything suggested to you is carnivore or keto. But if you're athletic and you hit another video, you'll find carbohydrates are not feared. Carbohydrates are used primarily as fuel for athletic performance. You could time the amount of carbohydrates that you eat. You can figure out how much you need per hour. It's very fascinating that in the athletic world, this whole idea of being fat adapted or trying to lose weight by restricting the food that you eat or restricting only to 20 grams of carbohydrates, such as the old Atkins diet, it really doesn't exist in any other world other than when people want to lose weight or are metabolically unfit or have insulin resistance and are trying to solve a problem. So to me, it's fascinating. My wife, for example, on her YouTube account, it has nothing but stitching and knitting and crochet. You'd think everybody does that. On my YouTube, the algorithm seems to just throw cycling videos at me and health videos because those are the types of things that I watch. What are your thoughts about this? Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts about this are. And do you really believe that some of these professional cyclists that race in like the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy, that they can consume 120 grams of carbohydrates and still be healthy individuals? Let me know your thoughts. Comment down below. If you really are having trouble though with your blood sugar and you're having diabetes and you want to naturally try to get yourself better, then there's a video right here for you at the end that you can watch and you can see how you can naturally help your own blood sugar.